All right, welcome everyone to March 30th webinar. Hanan will be presenting on behalf of herself and Mohammed, and they'll be talking about waste management. All right,
Yes.
have the floor.
Okay, thank you. My name is Hanan and my partner is Mohammed. So today we are going to present effective and sustainable waste management. So as you can see, there is a short phrase, My Ethiopia 2025. So we came up with the solution. So I'm going to mention some of our initiatives. So I want to start with the Ethiopian current status. Ethiopia is one of the fastest growing population worldwide and also one of the poorest around the globe. So as you can see from the map, this one is from Addis Ababa city government from 2001 in Ethiopian calendar, this one. So it shows that the population growth projection was kind of a lowest percentage. So when we come to the current 2010 current Ethiopian status, it shows kind of urbanized more rapidly. So in this case, the human generation has caused a lot of greenhouse gases and also an environmental catastrophe. So one of the problem statements, as you can see, so there are a lot of issues like lack of cleanness and greenery, also waste management problem, lack of landscape platform, mismanagement of resource, also monetizing strategy, lack of monetizing strategy, and also lack of trust with ourselves.
That's a lot of problems to overcome. Uh-oh, looks like there's a connection issue. Let's see if she can join back on. I'm going to see if I can take over her PowerPoint. She can send it to me so that there's less network issues with that. I'm so sorry, everyone. Hanan's trying to get back on. Her network is giving her some issues. All right. So, Bluestem Ecological is the company I work for. We're actually a for-profit company that builds, restores, and maintains native ecosystems. So what I thought was most interesting about this company when I started was that there's an economic case for our work. There's an economic case for creating native habitat, for creating natural ecosystems, and taking care of them. And so I'd always worked for nonprofit companies or corporation, nonprofit organizations that did natural land conservation, things like that. And so to find a company that does it, I thought was really neat. Now this model for a company does require that there's some degree of legislation or legal structure that requires native landscaping. And so all of the communities in my area have a stormwater requirement that more and more are pushing for those stormwater mitigation areas to be naturalized. Otherwise, they require new buildings to create some sort of basin to hold the stormwater that will hit the roof and run off their parking lots. So you don't need to know about that. So what is native landscaping? So native landscaping is just restoring ecosystems to their natural state. So where I live in the Midwest of the United States, we have prairie. So I technically live in the prairie state. And here's what it looks like on the right. It's really pretty when you see a full prairie in bloom. It's gorgeous. From a company land facilities manager perspective, they want to know that we're coming out 3 to 5 times a year to take care of it, and that it's easier to take care of than traditional lawn, turf grass landscaping. Native natural areas create habitat for birds, wildlife, pollinator insects, hummingbirds, other it increases carbon sequestration, regulates temperatures, increases water absorption and groundwater recharge. It's found that you can reduce the amount of silt and sediment that's going into your bodies of water by filtering it through native landscaping. So it's a really good kind of filter feeder per se, and then provides area for people to play outside. So some of the management techniques for prairies include prescribed burning. I'm not going to talk about the rest of this on here, but prescribed burning is used to manage prairies because they need fire to regulate themselves. So in who knows how far back, Native Americans, the first inhabitants of this landscape, they used fire. They would plant fires through the prairie and burn it all up. And if if anyone saw them doing it, they probably thought they were crazy. But this fire rejuvenates the soil. So I like to use the example of phoenix. So phoenix, it when it dies, it turns to ashes, and then a new phoenix is reborn from the ashes. And that's what happens to a prairie. So a prairie, you burn it up, the ground is just charred and scorched, and it's black. And from this picture here, where there's tall grasses, that's what it goes down to, just black, bare soil. And then within a week or two, if it's springtime, the seedlings will start coming up, and it'll turn the most luscious green you've ever seen. The whole thing will be just blanketed in a carpet of 6-inch seedlings, and then it'll grow back into the prairie it is. Now the reasoning that a burn is necessary is that it opens up the ground. Let's see if I've got another picture. Oops. It opens up the ground to get more light in and let new seeds germinate. So you can see these are pretty densely packed ecosystems. And all these flowers and grasses are dropping off seeds onto the ground every year, right? That's the goal, that they reseed themselves. Well, if there's all this thatch and vegetation above it, the seed or the sunlight will never reach the ground for new seedlings to grow up and be used. And so to promote biodiversity, to suppress weeds even, because most weeds don't like to be scorched, like prairie plants do, for good reason. And also because the warm ground helps the seeds germinate. Oops, I'm getting some feedback here. Oops. Isaac, I'm going to try and mute you. And hi, whoever joined. Thanks for joining. Could you just text me your English spelling name? Thank you. Isaac, could you please mute yourself? It's not letting me. We're hearing some background noise from you. Thank you.
Sarah, you could mute him with the house account, I think.
There we go. Thanks, Isaac. So the last thing is that when you burn a prairie, the heat from the sunlight as well as any residual heat from the fire is going to warm up the seeds in the ground and help them to kind of kickstart their day. It's like a nice warm shower in the morning, and gets nice and warm and ready to go for the day, and you don't want to leave your bed. That was me this morning. So I'm going to go back to our wetland ecosystems. So wetland ecosystems are another very common ecosystem in this area because we are the second lowest elevation state in the United States. Fun fact for all you people outside the United States who will never get to use this knowledge, but it's fun fact for me that I get to use. So wetlands are obviously important because they store our water before it goes into groundwater. And so areas that don't have wetlands often don't have a way for rainfall to penetrate into their aquifers. And if you're drinking well water, then you need that water to get back down into the ground. So aquifers are below the ground, almost like storage tanks of water. And usually they're surrounded by bedrock or other materials that keep the water contained. When you build a well, tap into that water source, that body of water under the ground, and that's how you get running water in your house. Now, other countries may use surface water for their water, or even where I live, we're on city water, so they cycle. I'm sorry, not where I live, but where some people live in the U.S., they have city water, and so they cycle the water. Now, most people in the U.S. don't like the idea of cleaning used wastewater like these factory sewage pipes and using that for drinking water again, but the technology is there for it to be perfectly safe. Either way, I still prefer the taste of water, well water, because that's what I'm used to, and that is thanks to wetlands. The wetlands also support migratory birds such as egrets and cranes, and they provide flood control. So if you have a huge rainstorm or monsoon, it's wet season, having wetlands is critical for protecting homes and buildings from flooding, because they can store so much more water than other parts of your landscape. Does everyone know the difference between permeable and impermeable surfaces? Anyone? All right. It's being quiet today. So impervious surfaces are things that are non-penetrable. So water hits it and it slides off or sits there. It doesn't have anywhere to go. It can't penetrate through it. It's not a porous. So hopefully the roof of your house or building is impervious, because that would be a shame if it was porous and you were getting dripped on all day when it rains. But like the soil is pervious surface. You know, wetlands are obviously permeable surface. So the water, when it hits it, it can filter down through the soil and into the ground where it wants to go. You know, think of water or rainfall as being shy. So it hits the ground, it just wants to get out of the way and out of the light and back underground where it likes to be. So when in my community we had an issue with flooding. There was a low-lying area where there was like a basketball court built, and it was a swamp. And they built this basketball court over it. So it seemed like every year it would crack and get worse and worse. And then they resurface it, and then it cracked again. And it was just amazing because this basketball court was never even. It was never, you know, how it was built to be, because it was built in a swamp, and so the water underneath, when it would get you know, filled with water, it would be slushy and moving, and then the water would go down, and then part of it would be slushy and the other part would be harder, and then that area would sink. And so that was the issue that was happening. So they built a wetland area that was just, you know, up the hill from it, and so water would drain into the wetland first before it reached the basketball courts. And it was connected to our stormwater drains. It was we were lucky to have that sort of infrastructure available for it to tie into. And within a year, it stopped you know, a huge flood. I think we got, you know, 8 to 10 inches of rain within 24 hours, and it stopped it. It did not flood the basketball courts like it always has for decades and decades. I mean, since the thing was built. And the water was retained, and within 3 days, all that water had been sucked into the ground. Now, when it flooded, it would usually take like a week for all the water to go away. And within 3 days, these plants had sucked up all the water. It was incredible. So that just goes to show how wetlands can work. You know, that's an ecosystem in temperate climates in the Midwest of the United States, northeastern Illinois specifically. So it's going to be different cases, different plants, different ecosystems. But wetlands are important worldwide. So here's a little bit about if you do this on a shoreline. You know, if you've got lakes or ponds near you and they are barren, they're going to erode. And that erosion is going to lead to more runoff, so more rainfall that flows, gushes into your lake, and probably brings with it any pollutants from the roadways, any trash, things like that along the way. And then as well, on the other hand, the natural shoreline is going to increase infiltration so that you're recharging your groundwater and protect your water from pollution. So you can see the difference. I mean, more is evaporated in a natural shoreline, which is great. That means we're going to have moisture in our atmosphere. But so much less runoff. Now, I've seen statistics that say, compared to like turf grass, like, you know, the typical American dream lawn or whatever that you see in movies, that can absorb about 2 inches of rainfall per minute, and it reaches the cap. It's super saturated, and it can't keep absorbing that 2 inches of rain a minute. Prairies and wetland areas, they can absorb as much as 9 inches of rain a minute, and they have a lot longer capacity that before they fill up. The reason for this is because they have much deeper root systems. So I'll skip to this slide. So a lot of typical turf grass is going to have about a 2-inch root system, which is I think 5 or 6 centimeters. Sorry. And then prairie plants in the ones native to Illinois, but I would imagine this is pretty consistent across all grasslands, have root systems up to 3 meters deep, I'm gonna say. That's gonna be my guess of the metric conversion. So it's a huge increase in volume that just the biomass of underground is greater than above ground. In fact, they say that prairies have more biomass below ground than a forest does above ground. Isn't that nuts? Like, you think of forest as the biggest, carbon sinks, but prairie and grassland ecosystems can actually capture more carbon under the ground through their soil creation, the organic matter that they store in the soil, and their deep, deep root systems. So it's really important that we're protecting our grassland ecosystems. Going back to the prairies, they typically have no trees in them, so it's all grasses and flowers. And they are the world's most endangered ecosystem, is grasslands, temperate grasslands. So the pampas of Argentina, and I don't know, Alvaro, does Chile have any grassland? Is that a thing there? But Brazil as well. These are areas where a lot of grassland has been converted to cropland. Even in the US as well. There are old maps of, the 1800s when people were first coming to my state of Illinois, where they were trying to, and the historians now are trying to figure, and conservationists now are trying to figure out what areas used to be prairies so that they can restore them. And basically anywhere there's a farm field that is not, soaked in water was a prairie. So a lot of farmers put in drain tiles underneath the soil so that all the rainfall was diverted off site into a pond. That means it was a wetland. So if they had to drain the soil for it to be good cropland, it was probably a wetland. And if it didn't have to be drained, it was probably a prairie because those are drier habitats. Finally, are oak woodlands and savannas. So oak woodlands is the typical forest canopy here in my community. But anywhere you go, there's going to be trees. Trees typically like a little wetter area than a prairie, so they're not as drought tolerant. Often you'll see as you get closer to riverbanks, all of a sudden it's just flush with tree cover, and that's the tallest area of the landscape, even though the trees are below the ground level because it's a ravine or a ditch to get down to the river. But that's because those trees need water. So one thing that's interesting to note is that only 10% of the sunlight that hits the tree canopy reaches the understory. So I know from my readings about the Brazilian Amazon, you hear about all the life that exists under the trees. There's the canopy, the understory, the shrubbery, and then the ground cover. There's so many layers and layers of plants that it's hard to believe that only 10% of sunlight reaches the ground and things are still able to grow, and that there are flowers, and there's so much life teeming in these forests because of the different layers it has. And so that's just a neat thing about photosynthesis that I think is cool. So underground is going to be, or under the canopy on the ground level is going to be the shade tolerant species. Oak woodlands in my region are a keystone species. They provide habitat for, I think one oak tree can provide habitat for 300 species, or provide habitat, food, nesting material. All sorts of resources come from oak trees. Oh, right now I'm seeing one of them. There's a chipmunk running through. It's like a ground squirrel sort of thing. It's small, about the size of a mouse, but with a little longer tail, and it's gray with black, or brown with gray, black stripes. So it kind of blends into the bark of the tree, more or less. You can see the amount of water that's mitigated from oak trees, so they can reduce, If anyone can tell me the gallons to liters translation of this, I have no idea. That's one conversion that I never figured out. Maybe 3,000 liters. I don't know. I don't know if a liter is larger or smaller than a gallon. This is really bad. I'm gonna look it up. If anyone beats me to it, you're welcome to. Okay, 20,000 liters of water. So apparently it's more than gallon, or a liter is less than a gallon. Good to know. 20,000 liters of water are reduced by a single oak tree. It's, again, insane amount of water that is not flooding your streets, you know, flowing into your rivers and eroding the shorelines, entering people's homes and causing flooding there. You know, these trees are so important. And if you've never heard this, though I'm sure most of you have, the canopy or the drip line of a tree, so where the edge of the leaves are, meaning that if you're underneath that, you're going to get dripped on in the rain still, from the, or, you know, after a rainstorm when the water is dripping through the leaves and making its way down to the ground. That kind of radius, or that, yeah, the perimeter or circumference of the tree's outer branches, that's about how big the tree mass is underground. So the roots underground are going to go at least as wide as that drip line, it's called. And then in my region, oak ecosystems provide over $2 million worth of flood control and water management services. So this is a newer sort of economics that's coming to the forefront, where people are trying to measure the economic impact of our ecosystems. And so they're typically saying, what's the marginal cost of providing this? So if we had to, you know, if we cut down a tree, how much in flood control do we lose that, you know, now our public works facilities or our sewage department has to deal with and take up? Our stormwater management, if we have it, it's going to be flooded more because we took out this one tree. I'm seeing that chipmunk again. He's really cute. And then the other way of calculating it is that if we had to replace the value that trees provide, how much would that cost us? So trees can do a lot more flood control than our current technologies will do in an economically feasible fashion. So if we were to have to replace, you know, a whole forest of trees with public infrastructure, it would be so cost prohibitive that, you know, no one could afford to live there because of the, you know, the taxes and fees involved with having to replicate that forest in hard infrastructure. You know, the cost of concrete and piping and culverts and all these things that go underground, that, or you know, even at street level, to move our water through so that we can function as a community. It would be so cost prohibitive that, yeah, it'd be impossible. And then obviously they provide, they clean our air through that photosynthesis again, clean our water, provide hiking, outdoor recreation, etc. That's not important. I guess I'll talk a little bit about this and then I'll stop talking. So when we go out to sites, when we try and find a degraded wetland or prairie or woodland ecosystem, one of the things we look for is an abundance of invasive species. So these two top photos, those are both invasive species that are very prevalent around here. You know, their seed travels by birds and by getting caught on tractors and mowers that come through and then being carried to the next site. We don't like those tractors. As well, they just reproduce so abundantly, and so they often take over areas, and they don't provide the same ecosystem services that the native plants do. and they often grow in monocultures. So those are two things that you can look for when, you know, we've kind of been trained that any monoculture is probably bad for the environment because it's taking the same nutrients from the ground every time it grows, and it's not putting, you know, it's not balancing the soil with you know, different groups of plants that can provide nitrogen fixation, like legumes typically provide nitrogen fixation in the ground. You know, other plants store carbon in the ground, other plants store potassium in the ground, all these different others, nitrogen, oh, phosphorus, that's the other one, storing phosphorus in the soil, all these nutrients that are these kind of three key nutrients that are critical to plant growth. They're not balanced when there's a total monoculture. And again, a monoculture is when a single plant species has dominated the area and nothing else can grow there. Erosion is another issue. Erosion is bad because, one, you're losing land mass, like it goes to the bottom of the lake or pond or waterway. So your shoreline erodes, and all of a sudden your, you know, the edge of your property or you know, your country, if you're in a coastal country and you're on the ocean, you no longer have beaches, which mean no more tourists are coming to go to your beaches. It means that you know, now you have, if there's a big flood or tsunami, it's going to hit further inland than ever before because the part further out doesn't exist anymore. So you want to avoid erosion for those reasons. And then as well, it starts, if you're inland and it's a pond or lake or even a river, that takes away from your stormwater capacity. So next time it floods, there's already, you know, a meter of sediment at the bottom of your lake or pond or river, and that's a meter less of capacity times, you know, the volume of that area. All that volume is taken out of your water capture, and so that water is going to end up on the shorelines, eroding it further most likely, or flooding homes. That I'm going to skip. Oh, last thing is wetlands can actually help with mosquito control because they move the stagnant water and help that water get back into the ground instead of sitting there. I think that's the only relevant thing. Yeah, okay, that's all I have. Sorry for the nature of this presentation and that it was not exactly aligned to our needs, but I hope you still got something out of it.
So let's talk.
So first, thanks for your presentation. I think you were not like ready to do it, and you do it in a really good way. So thank you for helping us, Sarah. A question is, what happened, or what you management the time between, for example, you lose a forest, you plant the forest again, but the time to recovery is very long. You could, what do you do there, like for not lose the new forest or something like that?
Here we have a legal process called conservation easements. And so I can designate a piece of land to be perpetually natural area, and it can never be developed. It obviously, you as a landowner, you have to say that I'm gonna, you know, if I sell land, I'm going to lose part of its value because what used to be, you know, good cropland that farmers would pay for now is not, because it's conservation area. So I have to have a plan for the long-term future of it financially, because, you know, there's still taxes to be paid on that land, of course lower than if it were, you know, developed land, but I have to be ready for that as a landowner. Public sector, what they can put things into preserves and then change their laws about state parks and preserves to make sure that no development or mining can happen there. in a lot of US national parks and public land, we allow for mining. We lease huge tracts of land to, coal mining, to mineral uranium mining. Uranium mining is often happening in or right next to reservations where we have shipped off and carted our native people. So fun fact about the US, not just in other countries do we colonize, but also in our own country. So when the Europeans came to the Americas and formed the colonies, they and started pushing westward to, even to my state, we rounded up all the native indigenous people, and we shipped them off to tracts of land that were often unfarmable or unsuitable. We didn't see any gold underneath, and that's basically where we left them. And then since then, those reservations have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, and they have less and less land and sovereignty. Yay, USA, right? So a lot of times on those publicly owned lands that are basically given to, we killed a lot of them too. That should be noted, and a lot of them died in the process of getting there, which was definitely our fault. Yay. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So the federal government owns the land under those Indian reservations, but the Native Americans have the land rights. But underground, not necessarily. So some government agencies will lease that land to a uranium mining company, meaning they're leaving their mining tailings, there in their waterways and polluting it. It's really, really bad. Really bad. Other areas, national parks that have timber companies come in. So they have companies that come in and deforest our natural parks. Really bad, poorly legislated, but from greed. And so working with your countries to figure out what ways we can use that land and protect that land, because like I said, there's an ecosystem services value. There's an economic value to our natural areas, to conservation areas. And so if we can make the case that this forest standing is worth $10 billion, oaks in my region, in our city, in the greater metropolitan area, is worth $2 billion. So near your city, how much is it worth? Is it worth $1 billion? Is it worth $3 million? Do you not have any flood water infrastructure in your city that it's worth more than $2 billion, because you can't replicate that because it's already developed, or your river is canaled and it can't increase, it can't take on any more water. It's run out of room. So those are things to think about when trying to protect those land. Is creating that economic case for it is unfortunately sometimes the only way you can create the need for it, or the relevance for it. Shreya or Sada, do you have any questions? Shreya, I saw your name pop up. Sorry, I'm looking out the window at all the birds outside. They're really pretty. And, it's spring here, so everything's waking up. I haven't heard birds really outside for like 5 months. So, really nice to hear birds chirping outside. So last question for you, and this one's for you guys. Tell me a little bit about the ecosystem in your community, right where you live, what you're used to seeing outside, what's there now, and you can type it as well. What's outside right now? Is that what's naturally there? Are there natural spaces by you? And what do they look like? Are they grasslands? Are they wetlands? Are they forests? Is it something else that I didn't mention? Because there's got to be other ecosystems, right? I mean, there's tundra. We obviously don't have tundra here. I don't know if that would be considered woodland or grassland or what. Maybe it's just tundra. So there's other ecosystems. Again, it's really flat here. I know some of you are from Nepal and Chile. You've got mountain ranges all around you. I don't have that. So you're going to have different ecosystems as well around those. No. I'm just asking about what does the ecosystem look like? And I should add that the ecosystem services, it's not like you've got a big pool of money or a treasure chest buried under a forest. It's not money that can be used. It's money that if you take that away, you have to spend. So that's really the that cost analysis, how it works. That if you take this away, you have to spend money to replace it with some sort of man-made infrastructure that provides the services that these areas provide. So like if you get rid of a beach and build a mall there, you have to think about, will that mall generate as much revenue as the tourists that would come to the beach? I don't know. Will it? In other places, they'll build hotels along the beach and privatize the beach. Will that hotel bring as much revenue and take care of the beach or the coastal area that the mangrove forest did? Because I'm pretty sure that if a tsunami or large waves hit a hotel, it's going to cost money instead of saving money like the mangrove forest does. Because mangroves can, they take a huge beating from wave action, and they protect the shoreline from erosion. So that hotel is it's gonna sue the government to say you have to replace the sand on our beaches because of this monsoon, or they're going to they're going to cause an insurance cost to replace the sand on their beaches that eroded away. Mangrove forests don't do that. They don't ask for money for anyone, right? Okay, Shreya says that it's terrestrial there. You're from Nepal, I'm guessing mountains, or not where you are. Are you in a mountain or a valley? Oops. Shrey lives in a valley, and ecosystem services there are cultural, regulating, and provision. Oh yeah, I think is that the definition of ecosystem services? I think so. I should have included that. I need to get that into my presentation. It was in another one that I did recently, and I was trying to remember. It was, yes, regulating, provisioning, and I swear there was one other thing that ecosystem services, regulating, provisioning. I thought it was 4 different types of services. Okay, supporting. So it's supporting, regulating, provisioning, and cultural. So can you give some examples of what the regulating services of your ecosystem are? And then and also the provisioning, because the provision is going to be the most different. So provisioning services, according to Wikipedia, include provide anything that is provided from your ecosystem. So food, including seafood or hunting or hunted animals, crops, wild foods, spices, raw material like lumber or wood for fuel, genetic resources. So genotopes that are used in healthcare, so medicinal plants, things like that. Water, other pharmaceuticals that come directly from that area, so medicinal plants. Energy such as hydropower or biomass fuel. And then ornamental resources it lists, so like shells that are used in jewelry and things like that. Shreya says that provisioning ecosystem services in her area come from harvesting the vegetation and animals, which are part of the ecosystem structure. Awesome. So what kind of animals do you have there? I mean, I just know of the Yeti, but ching. Sorry, bad joke. What are some of the animals that live in the valleys of Nepal? And anyone else is free to chime in with what's provisioned by their community, right? Regulating services I'll go into a little bit. That means carbon sequestration, predator-prey relationships that regulate the biodiversity and animal and plant populations. Waste decomposition, so the natural composting that's not your Alvaro's vermiculture pile that he's got in his backyard. It's the natural soil insects that are regulating. Red monkeys, rabbit, fox, and deer. Oh, that's cool. We have rabbits and foxes and deer here, but we do not have red monkeys. So that's really neat that you've got red monkey there. Oh, I've never seen a red monkey. I'm gonna look one up because I'm curious. Oh, they're so cute. I'm gonna show you guys. Look at the monkeys. They're so cute. I hope they're not problematic. They look fun. Look at their bright red. Wait, no. Is that it? Nope. That one. I think. The bright red face. That's cool. Very neat. Yeah, so you can see, flip the camera around. Actually, I'll walk outside and show you some of the birds that we have out here if they don't fly away. Oh, they're flying away. But I saw a robin and a blue jay, and the dogs in my house. Here's where I'm going to plant my garden, so you can see all the bare soil that I moved from. That is what it looked like before. Here's some invasive trees if you want to see them. Woohoo! Gotta get rid of those. And then here is the mighty oak tree. It's huge. Okay, what does... Oh, Alvaro's telling me he has 3 avocado trees in his backyard, which I think he's just rubbing in because he knows I like avocados. And Shreya says that management for ecosystem services relates to having a holistic perspective by realizing that change in one aspect of the ecosystem can mean change in the whole ecosystem. Exactly. So everything is interconnected in our world. All the systems flow together. And so as soon as we disrupt one cycle, it's going to disrupt another. So that's why it's so important that we're protecting our environment and providing these protecting these ecosystems so that they continue to function. And honestly, it's selfish because the globe will, the earth will still exist without these trees and this ecosystem, but our development will suffer. And so it's really to protect our financial interest, and our oh wait, can I get that squirrel? I don't know if you can see this. It's got a bushy tail in my neighbor's yard. Well, maybe we'll see it on top of the tree. It scurried away. It's so sad. Just so you know, squirrels can't eat chocolate. They like nuts, but not chocolate. Fun fact. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to me ramble on about ecosystem services. And take care of your trees and environments. Thanks, everyone.